I really don't care what happens to her at all. I don't care. Like, everybody they tiptoe around with this social media. But what y'all don't get is that it be real consequence for y'all little flexes, y'all quick flexes for $300 that you need. It be consequences for that.
The moment wasn't loud at first. It didn't start with yelling or chaos. It was quiet. Too quiet. And then, out of nowhere, it cracked open into something no one in the room could forget. A little girl's voice, shaking but sure, screamed the words that instantly shattered Iman Shumpert's world. "I want my real dad." The words were sharp, clear, and impossible to ignore. Time stopped. You could hear the silence after. That kind of silence that wraps itself around your chest and doesn't let go. And in front of everyone, Iman's face fell. His shoulders dropped. And for the first time, he broke down. Right there. In public. The man who always kept his cool, now unraveling. And it left everyone asking, was this just a child's confusion, or something much deeper? Since his breakup with Teyana, Iman's been doing what a lot of fathers try to do after separation, holding it together for the sake of the kids. On the surface, things looked fine. He posted sweet moments with his daughters. Proud dad content. School drop-offs. Dance parties. Hair braiding afternoons. But behind the smiles and filters, there's a struggle that doesn't fit into a square Instagram frame. A constant fight to stay present. To still feel like dad when you're no longer under the same roof. Friends close to Iman say he's been putting in the work, driving across town for visits, FaceTiming when he couldn't be there in person, planning fun weekends to keep the bond alive. But kids don't always process separation quietly. Sometimes they carry the tension in their little hearts. And sometimes, like now, it spills out. Loud, messy, and painfully honest. Iman's been feeling like an outsider for months. And this one moment might have pushed him past the edge. It happened during what was supposed to be a simple visit. A casual handoff. Teyana dropped off the kids, and Iman had planned a whole afternoon. Just them. Ice cream. A movie. Maybe the park. But something was off. His daughter seemed distant, distracted. He gently asked what was wrong, trying to comfort her. And that's when she said it, loud, unexpected. "I want my real dad." The words hit like a brick to the chest. People around said Iman went pale. His hands shook. He tried to hold it in, but his eyes welled up. He walked off. Took a moment. But the damage? It was already done. The sentence kept ringing in his ears. Real dad. Does she not see me that way anymore? Has the bond faded that much? Is someone else taking my place without me even knowing? Teyana hasn't commented directly on what happened, but she posted a cryptic message shortly after. Words shape hearts. No context. No caption. Just that. Insiders say she was shaken too, not because of Iman, but because everything feels like it's spiraling into an emotional mess. There's growing concern that maybe someone around the kids, possibly unintentionally, has been planting seeds of confusion. Could it be a new male presence in their life? A nickname that stuck? Or just something the child overheard and repeated without understanding the weight? The speculation is endless, but one thing is clear, there's tension. And it's not just between Iman and Teyana. It's between two different worlds trying to raise the same kids without breaking them in half. The internet, as always, had thoughts. As soon as the story leaked, it went viral. Twitter exploded. "No father should ever have to hear that," one post said. "That man's trying his best." Another added, "This is what happens when adults don't keep the emotional space clean for kids." People were divided. Some pointed fingers at Teyana, accusing her of allowing confusion into the family dynamic. Others defended her, saying children speak without filters and don't always know what they are saying. Some men opened up, admitting they'd heard similar things after their own breakups, and it stayed with them for years. One man wrote, "My daughter said something like that to me when she was 5. She's 20 now and doesn't even remember, but I never forgot." For many fathers, this story hit like a gut punch. It wasn't gossip, it was a reflection of their own hidden heartbreak. And then, the theories began to spread like wildfire. It was almost inevitable. When something this emotional and public happens, people want answers, explanations, and often, closure. One popular theory suggests that the little girl's words weren't meant to be taken literally. Instead, her statement was a way of expressing her feelings. She was sad, confused, and maybe didn't feel entirely safe with the changes happening around her. It was less about rejecting a person outright and more about communicating a complex swirl of emotions she couldn't fully articulate. Children often express their vulnerability indirectly, and sometimes what sounds like a harsh statement is really a plea for reassurance and stability. Another theory circulating is that someone in the child's life, perhaps even casually or unintentionally, referred to another man as dad. Kids are highly impressionable, and when they hear words repeated enough times, those words can stick, even if the adult meaning behind them isn't fully understood. Some fans have pointed to a man in Teyana's close circle who's been around more frequently lately. They speculate that the little girl might be picking up on the energy, the emotions, or even the language used around her, and that it's influencing how she processes her feelings about family and belonging. It's a reminder that children's worlds are shaped not only by direct interactions but by the subtle undercurrents of conversations and behavior they witness. Meanwhile, others believe this moment might spark a more significant response from Iman. Some fans think it could be the catalyst that motivates him to seek more legal rights regarding co-parenting or push for professional help, like therapy, to support the children emotionally. They imagine that this painful incident might push him to become more actively involved in the emotional healing process, fighting for his role not just legally but within the hearts of his daughters. On the flip side, some worry that it might have the opposite effect. That this moment, instead of drawing Iman closer to the situation, might cause him to retreat further into silence, overwhelmed by the pain and humiliation. Sometimes, the weight of such emotional wounds leads people to distance themselves as a way of self-protection, even when their instinct is to be present and supportive. Amidst all this speculation, there's also a hopeful narrative. Some believe this incident might finally force Teyana and Iman into having the raw, honest conversation that's been needed for a long time. Not a conversation filled with blame or recrimination, but one focused on healing and understanding. They could come together to figure out how to protect their children from the emotional crossfire that too often accompanies blended families and co-parenting struggles. A conversation about how to shield the kids from confusion and hurt, and instead provide them with a sense of security and unconditional love from both parents, even if they are no longer together. Beyond all the headlines, the wild speculation, and the noise from fans and strangers, there is a deeper, more painful reality. For a father, being called dad is far more than just a title. It is identity. It's a core part of how he defines himself, especially after a breakup. Fatherhood often becomes the cornerstone of a man's purpose, the foundation of his emotional world. When that identity is questioned or denied by your own child, it wounds more deeply than public drama or the harsh words of strangers ever could. Iman's tears in that moment weren't just about one sentence said by his daughter. They represented years of slow, painful distance growing between him and his children. They echoed missed holidays, short and fleeting weekends together, video calls standing in for bedtime hugs, and the creeping fear that every co-parenting father carries quietly in his heart, that someday, his child might forget how deep his love once ran. The most heartbreaking part of all this is that the child probably never intended to hurt him. Children absorb the world around them like sponges. They reflect the feelings, the tensions, and the emotional states of the adults in their lives. They repeat what they hear and sometimes act out what they feel inside. No matter how much adults try to shield them from pain, sometimes the cracks show through. This moment was a brutal reminder of how delicate family dynamics can be, especially when blended with new relationships and shifting roles. It exposed the fragile balance between protecting children and allowing them to express their truth. Now, the question arises, can this wound be healed? Or has this moment only widened a gap that was already present, perhaps even growing for years? Is it time for open family therapy, where everyone can come together in a safe space to share, listen, and heal? Maybe it's time for a deep co-parenting reset, where boundaries are redrawn, expectations are communicated clearly, and emotional safety is prioritized above all else. Or perhaps this is one of those pains that only time can soften, the kind that gradually dulls as memories fade and new bonds form. Nobody knows for sure what the right path forward is, but what is clear is that this moment can't be ignored. What we do know is that when a child speaks out, they are usually telling us something real, not necessarily about loyalty or love, but about their confusion, their unmet needs, and their underlying fears. Adults in these situations need to be brave enough to listen carefully and empathetically. It requires putting aside ego, resentment, and frustration in order to truly hear the child's voice. This is not always easy, especially when emotions run high and history weighs heavy. But it's necessary for any chance of healing. At the heart of this story is a reminder of the complexities of family, love, and change. It shows how children are the emotional barometers of the adults around them, and how their reactions, sometimes raw, sometimes painful, are messages that deserve attention and care. It reminds us that blended families require patience, clear communication, and, above all, respect for the emotional realities of the children involved. This moment, difficult as it is, could become a turning point. A moment when adults decide to put the children's emotional well-being first and work through their differences with compassion. Or it could become a lasting scar if mishandled, something that deepens pain and leaves invisible wounds on the hearts of everyone involved. The future is uncertain, but the hope remains that through honesty, courage, and understanding, families can navigate even the hardest storms. And that children, who only want to feel safe and loved, will ultimately find the security they deserve. Whether through their biological parents, the adults who care for them, or the loving community built around them.
So now I want to hear from you.
If you were Iman, standing there in that moment, how would you have responded? Have you ever been in a situation where your child said something that broke you without even knowing it? Do kids really understand what they are saying, or are they just repeating the energy around them?
Drop your thoughts below.
Hit like if this one hit your heart in a place you didn't expect. And subscribe, because when family tension bubbles to the surface, the truth always finds a way to scream through.